mode.
Good morning everyone and welcome to the ISMM webinar. Today's format will be a 20-minute slide presentation followed by 10 minutes of questions and answers. I've placed all attendees on mute so to avoid us speaking all at the same time. If you have any questions, please use the chat function and send them across to me so I can ask Marcus on your behalf after his presentation. Today Marcus Kalki will be talking to you about seller buyer psychology. It is with great pleasure that I introduce you to our host today, Marcus Kalki.
Hello, I'm Marcus Kalki from Sandler Training. Just some quick ground rules. What I talk about isn't for everyone, and that's okay. Feel free to chip in at any point with questions on the chat function. We've only got 20 minutes. If you want to talk further, then ping me an email with a date and a time when we can talk. And if you want to find out about training that I have, there's the website URL, which I'll share with you again at the end. And if you'd like to talk further, decide at the end whether it makes any sense to do so. So let me ask you this question. What's your number one objective for 2016? For 2016 to be so much better than 2015, what would you have to change? So make a note of that. Now at the end, I'll ask you one sales question because I don't sell through the webinar. Do you want to talk further with me, which will require you to say yes? If you don't want to talk to me, then just say no. And whatever you do, don't give me a think it over, because as we're talking about buyer-seller psychology, one thing all salespeople must recognize is that think it over is really a slow, polite no. It's where people are too nice to say no to the salesperson's face, and I'm fine with a no. I've been around the houses for 30 years, and I don't take it personally. So, where do we begin? Well, human beings are chimps with egos and speech. You can see from this the similarity between George Bush and a monkey. The reality is that traditional selling doesn't work. Traditional selling attempts to convince you using logic and reason, which means that you're selling to the wrong bit of the brain. Understand this, 100% of all decisions, buying decisions included, are 100% emotional 100% of the time. Now, our brain is made up of three main areas. The lizard brain, or the reptilian brain, which is about 300 million years old. The mammalian brain, or the limbic system, which is about 200 million years old in evolutionary terms. Now, these form System 1. System 1 operates at 42 million bits of information per second. Let me repeat that, 42 million bits of information per second. The human brain, the neocortex, is around 200,000 years old in evolutionary terms and operates at quite an impressive 42 bits of information per second. So you need to think of System 1, the reptilian and mammalian brain, like a 6-ton elephant, and System 2, the human brain, like a human rider. And if the elephant wants to go down that road to get that bunch of bananas, what can the human rider do about it? Pretty much nothing. The only thing you can do is keep the elephant happy. Now, why don't traditional selling systems work? Well, traditional selling systems typically look something like this. You qualify for money, authority, and need. Are you the decision maker? Do you have a project? Do you have a budget? At which point, you then try and present your solution using features, advantages, and benefits. You should buy from us because our carbungulator is better than the defibrillator on the Ripit, and we've been around since 1842. Our technology does whiz, bang, and wallop, etc., etc., etc. And the prospect is meant to be infused and buy the sizzle. And once you see all these buying indicators, then you trial close, and you try and put your hand in their pocket, and then you have to field a few objections. And then they ask you for a proposal. I promise that does stand for follow-up. Now, the buyer has a system too. Napoleon said it rather well, God is on the side of the bigger guns. Whoever has the better system wins. Now, why does the buyer have a better system? Well, what the buyer tends to do is prey on our neediness and our desire to make a sale. So the first thing they do is they lie to us. And they don't lie because they're bad. They lie because they don't trust us. On your mother's knee, what was it she taught you about salespeople? You could trust them, hand over your money quickly, make decisions in a hurry, or all salespeople lie. They'd sell their granny in order to make a fast buck. Of course, it was the latter. Because a lot of salespeople are those sort of shiny suit wearing, big ugly tie, pushy, over the hand handshake, loudmouth, gift of the gab. And actually nobody trusts that. And that isn't selling. Now, once they lie to you, they say, well, look, show me what you've got. So you present. At which point, all you see is the shiny bit of their bald patch, and their pen is moving, and as they write down notes. And they ask you a bunch of questions. We've got a problem with this. How do you help us fix that? How much do you charge? Tell me how you fix this kind of problem. And your mother's still there on your shoulder saying, answer the nice man's question. Because if she asked you a question, what did she expect? Of course, you just came up with it, an answer. So then you trial close. Now, if I ask any of you to give me your credit card details now, I'm going to build a wall of resistance. And the problem is, if you try to close, that's exactly what you do. So you flush out a bunch of smoke screens, stalls, delays, objections, and they're things like, we don't buy on days ending in a Y, ABC companies so much better, faster, cheaper, at least Dick Turpin wore a mask, how dare you charge so much, you're all the same, I haven't heard anything different. And you handle all these objections with positive, reassuring statements like, you know, Bob, I understand exactly how you feel. A lot of our customers initially felt that way. What they found was, and they've heard it all before. So once you've run out, or they've run out of objections to throw at you, their final coup de grace is they ask you for a proposal where you can document your stupidity together with all of your confidential pricing and your special secret sauce so that they can shop it around town. And they normally tell you to get this to them in a hurry because their boss is off skiing or on holiday. So you hurry up and you spend Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday getting this thing completed, and then you send it off to them and you wait and wait and wait, and then you follow up and you get voicemail. And it seems like they've been abducted by aliens because they're in hiding. Now, don't suppose any of this is familiar to you, is it? So, why doesn't traditional selling work? Well, first of all, it's using reason and logic. They've heard it all before. And people buy in spite of you selling this way, not because of it. You've got to sell to the right bit of the brain, not to the person in front of you. Now, the way buying works is your child ego state, which is your limbic system, says, I want one, can I have it, please, please, please. And it turns to your parent ego state for permission. Now, if permission is granted, it turns to the adult to gather logical evidence to justify the emotional decision. If any of you have got kids, you know what happens if you don't grant permission. It goes backwards and forwards, or until the parent gives in, or until the child finds another shiny object. Now, one of the reasons why buyer's remorse occurs is because the salesperson doesn't go back from the adult to the parent to make sure that permission is still in place after they've delivered the logical evidence that the neocortex, the human brain, requires in order to provide it to the reptilian brain. Now, every single dysfunctional relationship you can or will ever have can be described on the 3 points of this triangle: a victim, a persecutor, and a rescuer. The victim voice sounds like, why me? Life's so unfair. This always happens. Save me. The persecutor says, you always, you never. You're such a disappointment. You piece of... And the rescuer, I was only trying to help. What they do is they say, no, don't do it that way. Let me show you. And then they take over and they disempower you. And you don't really need anybody to be part of this. In fact, you can work this triangle all on your own without involving anybody else. Now, this takes you what I call above the line. And what will force you there is where you put the customer on a pedestal. The customer is not king. The customer is never more than your equal, even on your worst day. Procurement are trained to attack you at an identity level, who you are, in order to get you softened up so that you give away your margin and give away little nibbles of extra benefits without getting to the negotiation table. Then, when you get there, they really take you to the cleaners. Things like bids and tenders, RFPs and RFIs are designed to stop you from selling because they understand that if they take the emotion out of it, then they're in control. They have a tendency to move the goalposts. Give me a call in a couple of weeks, or I'm sorry, we haven't had a chance to look at it. Give us a call back in another couple of weeks. So the deal slips. You end up with think it overs. You get asked to send information by the gatekeeper. Call me back in 6 months. So the one constant in all of your dissatisfying relationships is you. Now, how do you stay out of psychological games? Well, my favorite philosopher, Bruce Lee, was asked, Mr. Lee, what's the best way to avoid a punch? And he said, be somewhere else. Great advice. Somewhere else is here. We call this the winner's triangle. The winner's triangle, instead of being a victim, you're vulnerable. Instead of being a rescuer, you're nurturing and empathic. And instead of being persecuting, you're assertive. So in the context of running late for an appointment, it's not my fault. Bloody sat-nav took me in the wrong direction. I tried my best. That's the drama triangle. As opposed to, Bob, I am so sorry. It's entirely my fault. I didn't give enough time to take into account the traffic. You're probably very upset with me, and I understand that. Look, should we just cancel the meeting? Now, which one is attractive? Now, vulnerable. Vulnerable comes from the Latin, to make yourself woundable and do it anyway. A Roman legionary would rip off his armor and go into battle unarmored as an act of courage. So saying it's my fault, saying I'm sorry, saying help me, I'm confused, that's vulnerability, and it's incredibly powerful when combined with assertiveness. I'll come to that in a moment. Nurturing is where we understand that the other person is stroke deprived. Everybody is stroke deprived. The stroke is a unit of transaction in a communication which validates the other person. Good point, great question. You know, you'd be justified to think that. I understand your position. Now, being assertive is not aggressive. Assertive is planting your feet, learning how to draw a clear line, agree some boundaries, and make sure that neither side crosses them. Aggressive is attacking, hostile. It can come across, when you're defending, it sounds like you're attacking. A case that I'm not particularly proud of. One day I said to my wife, where are my keys? And she said, wherever you left them. So I defended myself and said, well, you know, if the place wasn't such a mess. And it felt like an attack to her. So she defended herself and said, well, if you weren't such a slob, and before you know it, World War III broke out. So you've got to watch out for getting caught up into these fights and getting dragged above the line into that drama triangle. Now, assertiveness is about being direct and forthright and telling it as it is without being aggressive. You know, I've upset you, haven't I? Should we just end it? Would you like me to close your file? Look, I'm getting the sense that you have no interest in what I'm talking about. Would you prefer to just end the conversation now? Or, Bob, I'm confused. You told me earlier that you had a problem with this. Now you're telling me that really what you want to do is sit on this and think about it. What I think I'm hearing you tell me is I haven't convinced you. Would that be fair? So, above the line and below the line. What does this mean? Well, above the line is where drama occurs. It's where your critical parent, your adaptive child, and your negative nurturing parent reside. And there's a form and compared with reality as perceived equals your emotional reaction. Now, that creates a negative emotional reaction. Below the line, expectation and preference, you notice no prejudice, as compared with reality as perceived equals rational response. Now, what do I mean by an emotional reaction? Well, an emotional reaction occurs in the limbic brain, in a primitive part of your brain that means that you don't have control. Whereas when we're operating from our neocortex, from our adult brain, then we can choose a response. And we want to stay in our nurturing parent, our positive nurturing parent, and in our adult, because that allows us to stay in control. However, we do want our prospect to tap into their emotional brain, because all decisions are emotional. So when you get drawn into an above-the-line engagement, you or they feel hard done by, and one of you seeks to cut corners or get revenge. You buy into their problem. No, I don't have any budget. I don't have any money. That becomes buyer empathy. And then you start running this script inside your head, which makes you believe that what they're telling you is true instead of the smokescreen that it really is. And you give away your powers. There's no point abdicating your power. You should achieve parity. And if you fall into the buyer's system, you've given up control and you create the conditions for a lose-lose or a lose-win outcome. So a quick reminder of the buyer-seller dance. Qualify, lie, present, steal, close, mislead, follow up, hide. And how do you achieve parity? Well, we teach something called an upfront contract. We use something called an upfront contract that looks like this. Actually, Bob, before we get started, can we agree some time and some ground rules and objectives for the meeting so that we both find the time that we have together useful? Great. For my part, I'd like to achieve this, you want to achieve that. Okay, naturally not everyone is a good fit for us, and we're not a good fit for everyone. So if at any point either one of us feels that there isn't a good fit, are you okay that we can just say no to each other and not waste each other's time? Make sense? Now, obviously, if you haven't said no to me and I haven't said no to you, it probably makes sense for us to set aside some time at the end to map out what happens next so we keep the momentum going forward. Are you okay with that? Now, a moment ago I said it was okay for you to say no to me. Can I tell you 2 reasons why you may not want to buy from me? The first one is we are eye-wateringly expensive. The second is working with us is not always a pleasant experience. Are either of those reasons for you not to work with us? Great, let's talk about that. And that way you can light the fuse on the bomb that's going to explode in your face later and neutralize the 2 most common objections that are going to come up anyway. You may as well find out if they're going to be deal breakers, conditions that mean you can't work together right at the beginning, rather than waiting 6 months, 5 meetings, and having invested £150,000 in the pursuit. Remember, you are never less than your prospects equal, even on your worst day. So how do we sell? If you want to sell using the brain and selling to the brain, the first thing you do is you close up front. You agree at the beginning what's going to happen at the end, and you agree some basic rules. How long it's going to take, your role, my role, what the outcome is going to be at the end, and clear next steps. Then you spend time disqualifying. You try and get the prospect to say no to you, and you only present if they qualify. And they only qualify if they become a prospect, i.e. they're in your target market, they have a problem you can fix genuinely today, they're willing and able to spend the time, the money, and the resources, they're willing and able to make the decision to buy from you, and they're working towards a clearly defined timetable. And you have everybody in the room who needs to be there to make a decision. They agree up front before you present that they will give you a yes or a no, and nothing in between, no think it overs, no call me backs. That at the end of it, you're not going to end up in one of those stalls or delays. So the rule is close easy and then disqualify hard. Now, selling and seduction are very similar. The first thing you have to do is attract them. We teach using a 30-second commercial that enters the prospect's mind. Typically, we get invited in by business owners in the Thames Valley who are frustrated they're not meeting enough decision makers. Others tell us that they're meeting decision makers but not closing. A few tell us that they're closing, but then they're having to discount in order to buy the business. I don't suppose any of these ring any bells. If they do, then we start building rapport. We set up an upfront contract. We make sure that we're making them comfortable with us as human beings. And then in the seduction process, what we do is we spend time getting them to tell their story. No one likes it when you're in a nightclub on the, out on the Raz and someone comes up to you and says, hello, what's your name? And you say, Marcus. And then they say, enough about you. Let me talk about me, my company, my products, my service. Because that's what most salespeople do. Now, the smart money then pushes them away and says, no, it's all happening too fast. And that way, you never get accused of having pushed them into a corner. And as a result, they surrender the order. So metaphorically, you get your leg over guilt-free. So whoever has a stronger system wins. 80% of the average salesperson's time is spent in that follow-up and hide phase. If you can just eliminate that, you can increase your sales by 400%, which means that you no longer waste time loosely qualifying, trying to present to sell, trying to close, trying to follow up with a proposal. You never take lies, you don't do free consultancy, you never handle objections, and you never chase. So a game-free way to sell is using what we call the Sandler submarine, which is you build trust and rapport and comfort, then you close, then you build a contract in pain, budget, and decision so that you make sure that what you're doing is delivering precisely what the customer wants in the fulfillment step where you're fulfilling the contract you built in pain, budget, and decision, And then you give them the option of backing out when they're in front of you. That's called the post-sell. So, quick reminder, the fast bit of the brain, the reptilian and mammalian brain, operates at 1,000,000 times the speed of the human brain. You've got to sell to that limbic brain, which is the mammalian brain where decisions and emotions reside, because all decisions are 100% emotional. So, if you have any questions, then please feel free to drop me a line. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Marcus Kauke. On Twitter, I'm The Inquisitor, and my telephone numbers are up there. So I'll leave that up there for about another 20 seconds so you can take a quick screenshot. And I cover the southeast of the UK together with my colleague Benjamin, who's based down in Southampton.
Thank you for that, Marcus. We've had a few questions come in. The first one is...
Excellent.
Yep, the first one is,
yep, fire away.
How do you close at the beginning when you haven't even presented?
Okay, Natasha, thanks very much for inviting me in today. Before we start, can we just agree some ground rules? You'll need to play this with me.
Okay.
Yep?
Yep.
Can we just agree some ground rules?
No problem.
Excellent. Well, look, how long have we got for this conversation?
However long you want, yeah.
Okay. Well, look, let's say an hour. So how would that hour be best spent? So that at the end of it, you say, "Thank goodness I invited you in." What needs to happen by the end for you to say that?
We need to bring something away from it. We need to learn.
Okay. Excellent. So what I would like to be able to do is see your business through my eyes, and assuming we can do both of those things, any reason why we wouldn't be able to move forward on this?
No.
Okay. Well, look, I've got some questions for you. You've probably got a lot of questions for me. You probably want to know who I am, who I've worked for, the kind of results that I've had, how much it costs, what it's like working with me, the kind of results that we've delivered, that kind of thing. Fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've got a few questions for you, some of which you may not have answers to.
Okay.
In fact, if you did, you probably wouldn't have invited me in. Fair?
Okay.
Are you okay that I ask you some tough questions that you won't have the answers to?
No problem.
Without getting upset?
That's fine.
Okay. Now, look, we're not right for everybody. I recognize that. And I want you to be comfortable just saying no thank you to me in the event that you don't feel that I'm a good fit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does, yeah.
Okay. Now, equally, if I can't help you for whatever reason, would you be okay if I just said to you, I don't think we're the right people to help? Would that be okay?
That would be fine, yeah.
Yeah? Now, I don't know what yes looks like, but tell me something. Assuming we get to the end and you haven't said no to me and I haven't said no to you, any reason why you'd be uncomfortable setting aside 3 to 5 minutes to map out what happens next, get a date in the diary for our next meeting, and maybe identify who else besides the two of us needs to be involved? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Now, I'm going to turn my phone off to make sure that we don't get interrupted. I don't suppose I could ask you to do the same, could I?
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Now, a moment ago, I said it was okay for you to say no to me. Can I tell you the two most common reasons why people sometimes say no to me? And then you can just tell me to leave. Is that okay?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah? The first one is we're always the most expensive of any training provider you speak to, and typically by a factor of maybe 3 to 5 times. Is that going to be a reason for us not to keep talking?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Now the second reason is working with me is rarely a pleasant experience because my job is to hold up the ugly mirror, to challenge you and to make sure that I'm helping you solve your problems, not to mollycoddle you. Now, not everybody likes to be challenged. Are you somebody who doesn't like to be challenged?
Yeah, I don't like to be challenged.
Okay, well, in that case, just tell me to leave and then we can part as friends.
We've got a few more questions coming in regarding this.
Okay. Fire away.
Okay. So we've got one that says, isn't closing up front really just qualifying the business fit and viability before the presentation? Closing surely is getting the order, which you won't get until you present.
Okay, it's a matter of semantics. I believe that you close up front in the upfront contract and you confirm the order in the second upfront contract that occurs between the decision and fulfillment step. So let me pull that up again. Where are we? View. Slideshow. So between the fulfillment step and the decision step, there's another upfront contract. We call that the ultimate upfront contract, and that's where you confirm the order. So yes, maybe my view is that you should always be contracting, and all the way through you're getting little agreement after little agreement. Net result of that is that while you may be closing, you may be getting a decision at the end, what your objective is to get the prospect to close themselves. So I had a meeting yesterday with a prospect. At the end of it, my only question was, so what would you like to do next? And they said to me, when can we get started? Now that's a good close. Rather than me saying, if I could show you a way, or would you like it in red or blue, or any of the, the traditional alternative closes, porcupine closes, Ben Franklin closes, none of that. Your job is to get the prospect to surrender the order rather than to close them. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you. So we've had another one come in. It's saying it feels almost too salesy, a lot of control up front, which could put prospect off. It's not suited also to enterprise software sales.
Fair point. Well, first of all, like I said, it's not for everyone, so don't do it if you're not comfortable with it. The truth is that what I'm teaching is sheet music, and I have to polarize it for training. When you're in front of a prospect, you need to be a lot more nurturing than I've been. We've got 20 minutes to go through the whole thing, so I've had to rush it. But this is just sheet music. So I'm Lemmy from Motorhead, you're Whitney Houston, and we're singing It's a Wonderful Life. Same notes, same order, same lyrics, but massively different sound. And this needs to sound like you. It has to sound natural. If it doesn't, then you're doing something wrong. So I accept that in the context of this event, yes, it will sound salesy. But again, when people tell me it sounds salesy, what they really mean is I'm uncomfortable being a salesperson more often than not. What they'd really like is for people just to buy. Now, absolutely accept that. It's fine. If you're not comfortable being in sales, but you have to do it anyway, sometimes you're going to have to bite the bullet. But the reality is when prospects are emotionally involved, they never see this stuff happen to them. So in a cold call, I might kick open the call with, oh, this is a cold call. Would you like to hang up? Now, 98% of people say, no, you've been honest. Go on, you've got a couple of minutes. Well, look, let me tell you in 30 seconds why I'm calling. And then you can decide whether to hang up or invite me in. Does that make sense? Now, if they say yes to that, I close them on 5 things, 8 seconds into the call, and there's no pressure. It's not salesy. I think it's being disarmingly honest. So, next question.
Okay, thanks for that. The next one is, isn't there a danger that the language you use can feel manipulative and almost old school sales cheese?
That's my lack of skill. Yes, if you do it in the context of rushing it in 20 minutes, my average sales meeting takes 2.5 hours. They book me in for an hour, but they keep me there. I keep asking if they want me to leave, and they keep me there. So yes, in the context of this, I probably haven't done it the most justice. For that, I can only apologize. But if you're worried about sounding cheesy, change the wording. I'm not wedded to the wording. The system is reliable. And with a 96% close rate, I'm pretty happy with it. But you've probably got a better close rate than that. That's cool.
Thanks for that. We have another question. What if you have to do a tender and can't sell emotionally?
Now that's a great question. And in fact, that's the subject of about another 3-hour conversation. Bids and tenders, all of them, every bid and tender is bogus. Now, I understand that in some situations you absolutely have to do a bid or a tender, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to follow the rules. I recognize public sector Publicly listed companies, they have to get 3 quotes and all that stuff. But the reality is, the way these tender systems work is in 80% of cases, they've already decided who they're going to give the tender to. So if you haven't written it, you then have to move the entire playing field. So I accept that in some cases, you may have to do a bid or a tender or write a proposal or whatever it happens to be. But in my experience, you can sell around this. We have something called an RFP Truth Finder, which I'll try and dig up and put it on screen. There you go.
Okay.
Okay. So not all RFPs are legitimate. If you're going to prepare an RFP response, remember it's the 3rd most expensive unmeasured cost in your business. So you want to find out when the RFP is due, what's the likely profitability? So the sale value minus the cost. If so, how high and who in the RFP company can be called to get the following questions answered? First of all, should I involve senior management? How did our company make the list for receiving this RFP? And how many RFPs were sent out? I was coaching one of my clients recently, and they were told that over 50 companies had been sent the RFP. Now, that was just simply an information gathering exercise for free consultancy. If we decide to participate, then what happens next? What's the role of the current supplier? Who's going to be involved? On what basis are they going to be involved? When is the RFP decision going to be made? Will the low bid be the one that wins? If you're never the low bid, what's the point in participating? What results is the company hoping to achieve by implementing the contents of the RFP? Why aren't they doing it in-house? If we decide to submit an RFP response, who can we submit a rough draft to make sure it's critiqued, to make sure we've covered all the important points? And then big questions. What are the chances that this is a legitimate RFP? What are our chances of us winning it? Can we even win it? Have we been trading long enough? Are we big enough? Are we on their preferred supplier list? Compared to the other opportunities we're pursuing or targeting, how does this stack up? I did a blog on LinkedIn yesterday talking about putting a shark in the tank of your salespeople to make sure that you're doing the right thing. Prioritizing your time, your money, your resources on the must-win opportunities or the will-win opportunities is crucial. One of my clients works in the cloud space, and he's got a number of partners who brought him a load of opportunities, all of which are going to end up in some form of RFP. But when I asked him a series of questions, it turned out of the 13, only 4 of them had the answers to those questions. So that's where he's going to spend his time. And the big question at the end is, should we participate in this RFP process? If anyone wants the RFP Truth Finder, drop me a line and I'll send it to you.
Okay, we have another question.
Yep.
In the opening phase, how would you adapt for aggressive buyer types or more passive buyer types where you're seeking to elicit the same response, i.e. establishing the walk-away point?
Sorry, I missed the first part.
Okay. In the opening phase, how would you adapt for aggressive buyer types or more passive buyer types where you are seeking to elicit the same response?
Right, okay. Well, again, in the bonding and rapport phase, this is where you need to learn to adapt. The prospect gets whatever personality type they need in order to buy from you. We use a profiling tool called DISC. Dominant, influencer, steady relator, compliant. Dominant's a fast-paced, big picture, love to win, favorite pronoun I. You don't give them a lot of information. Best thing to do is pick up the phone or speak to them in person. Give them 2 choices and they're pretty much done. They're very fast to anger, very quick to forget. And they start things, but they don't complete and finish. You have influencers who are a bit like Tigger. Bounce, bounce, bounce. Their main thing is fun. They tend to be more flamboyant, have lots of personal relationships that are very thin but wide. They're they tend to spend a lot of time trying to make friends. Steady relators are slower paced. They are all about other people. Their favorite pronoun is we or us. They're team orientated. And you need to adjust knowing that they're completed finishers and they're quite cautious, they're people orientated, you've got to adjust your message to suit them. And then you have the cautious types or compliance who are very detail orientated. They love stuff in writing, they take their time. They're very nervous and cautious of salespeople. And so you've got to adjust your approach according to the type of buyer that you're dealing with. You also have to adjust your upfront contract. So with a high dominant, you might not do the whole upfront contract straight away. You do it in stages as you went through the process. Whereas with a high steady relator, they love the upfront contract because it means that everyone is clear about what's expected. Everyone knows precisely what's happening at any given moment. There are clear boundaries, clear expectations. Neither side is under any pressure. So absolutely, you have to adapt. And remember, everything that I'm teaching you today is sheet music. You've got to interpret it according to your personality type and also the prospect's personality type to make sure that it's a natural fit.
Okay, thank you everybody for your questions today. We've come to an end of the webinar. Please make sure to check the website for upcoming events. Thank you everyone for attending, and a big thank you to our host, Marcus Kalki. So I hope to see you in upcoming events. Thank you.
Thanks.